I'd like to call this meeting to order, the regular meeting of the Willington Board of Education. It's Tuesday, September 10th, 2019 at 7:03 p.m. We always start off our meetings with time for present to speak. So we ask that you identify yourself and where you live and your address for the record. If there's anyone present to speak who'd like to.
Lori Sentelbaum, 271 Turnpike Road. I'd like to thank the board for all of their work on this process of the school facility study, and I think it's time we move forward with some solution.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Sarah Smith, 69 Eldridge Road, and I am here because I'm excited to see the direction that the board has decided to go. And though I have an opinion, I would like to see new school. I'd like to see us acquire land for the facility. But after tonight, what you present, I know that you have put your best effort forward, everyone on the board, and I'm supportive of that.
Thank you. Randy? No? Okay.
I would just echo what they said.
Fair enough. Okay, moving on to communications. Okay, no communications. We might be out of here by 7:30. Okay, I want to jinx myself. Okay, Board of Education Chairman's report. Welcome back to a new school year. I wanted to point out two things. One is that I ask you all to come to our next meeting 15 minutes early. We're going to have a little celebration like we sometimes do before the meeting. So I just wanted that in the records while you were all here to make note to come at 6:45 next month. That would be great. To also ask you to give some thought as to whether or not you'd like to attend the CABE conference in November. It is November 15th and 16th at the Groton Marriott where it was held last year. I think it's an essential part of board service. I believe they will allow us to purchase a seat, and then whoever is elected to the board starting their term can fill that seat. So I think, does that sound right, Herb?
Yeah,
that's the way it works. So if you're interested in going, we can reserve room to make sure that we can all attend. And if you want me to have them let Brenda know?
yes.
Okay, so if you would let Brenda know if you're interested in going so she can coordinate the registration, that would be great. And that's it for me.
Hopefully I don't get a dead car this time on my way down there.
Maybe we'll drive you, all of us, like in a caravan, like the way they take other VIPs. Okay, let's move on to superintendent reports.
All right. So we had a retirement, Judy. Kate Grabowski-Clark is our school-wide enrichment specialist at Hall School. She's retiring at the end of the month. She's been in teaching for 34 years. She's been in Willington for 3. She's really the one that extended our gifted and talented program into the school-wide enrichment program and built the makerspace. She applied and was accepted into a really prestigious photography program at the University of London. That's where she's headed. So if you say lifelong learner, there you go. So obviously we wish her well. And so we opened that position up internally, and we have a very highly qualified candidate. I don't want to say yet because we have not signed anything, which would mean we would have moved somebody into that position that's already in-house, and then we would have to fill that other position. So more to come on that, but obviously we wish Kate well. We hired, and I didn't have this name last time, I apologize. We hired a new Spanish teacher for Hall, Angela Ruiz, and she's actually a Willington resident, and she came to us from Wyndham. Just a reminder that world language is a shortage area, so we are lucky to have someone in that position that is qualified. We hired Kim Talona as the new school counselor at Hall School. She came to us from Parish Hill. and she's replaced Paul Nash, and she's already establishing herself in that new role, big shoes to fill. I will say that that pool was extremely strong. I was told they interviewed 7 people, and they would have hired 5 of them. Dynamite pool, and so it speaks very highly to her, and her references are just glowing. So they were very sad to lose her. Here's the strange one now that was a shift that everyone was wanting to know what was going on. We hired Amy Redding as a new library media specialist for Hall School. This is a shortage area. Library media specialist is a shortage area, so we're happy that she was interested. She is not certified as a library media specialist. She is certified as a special education teacher. However, you can apply to go into a program if you are in a shortage area if you're entering a library media specialist program. She looked, she applied, she got in, she had her first class. So within 1 year with her own money, she's going to be a certified library media specialist. Oh, but I remind you that she's been doing this at Center School for many, many, many years, but under the hat of a paraprofessional. So we've been lucky to have her. So she's going to be teaching all of the classes at Center and at Hall. And it's a bit of a flip-flop now where we've hired a paraprofessional to stay at Hall, and she will be, when Amy's not there, she will support the teachers coming in when students come in to do research, and Amy will then support that paraprofessional. And they're already flying. The things that they're doing is great. We're excited. The paraprofessional that we hired is Leilani Arnaud, and she's worked with us before. She was in-house, and she was interested in that role. So we're excited about that, and it's a nice transition for Amy, and I can't tell you how excited she was when she got into the program and was able to do this.
I have a question. Will the center children have access to the library when Amy's at Hall? They'll be,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They'll be they can.
They can, and they also have. We built in collaboration time between Leilani and Amy too, so she's not alone. We were able to work Amy's schedule so that she can start some days at Hall and teach her classes and still leave contractually at Center School and still meet all her classes. The principals did a great job scheduling. They adjusted some things to make it work. So we're excited about how it turned out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then we hired 3 paraprofessionals for special education: Kristen Androlonis, Amanda Hanson, and Kaylee Carr. Amanda Hanson, you may have heard that name because Amanda was hired last year as a custodian, our night custodian at Hall, and said, I want to do more. I believe I can help out more. She applied and was interviewed and got the job. So now we have an opening for a custodian.
What job is it she's taking again?
She's a paraprofessional for special education. She's at Center School. I think everyone's holding their breath about this one. The Mike Choi leaving the 7th grade math position is still open. I will say we're super, super fortunate because we have people in this district that are dual certified. Erica Bouchard, who's done a lot of math curriculum for us at Center and at Hall, has middle school math certification and said, I'll teach it as long as I can back off my curriculum work until you fill the role. I had a parent approach me in the parking lot after meet and greet, was just ecstatic that she was going to be in there. So we have a very qualified, really good teacher teaching in math right now at the middle school until that position's filled. It's allowing good instruction for kids. And so that had to be the priority over the curriculum. The curriculum is going to have to wait until that position's filled. So big thanks to Erica for that. Moving along. Bus transportation.
Every position has been filled?
No. So we're going to, once the final shift happens with Kate leaving, Grabowski Clark, this gifted and talented, that program, the Makerspace program, if someone internally fills that, we'll have to fill that position. And then math is still open. But they're both currently okay.
Are they both shortage areas?
Yeah.
We've kind of created the Makerspace position. It's not a shortage area, but math is. Most of math.
Do you have any applicants, or?
We have, and I'll remind you that I've said this numerous times, that the people we've hired in the last few years have been dynamite. And I don't want to say anything bad about anybody, but the applicants that we've interviewed so far have not met the standard that we're looking for. And so instead of settling for someone, which isn't the right thing to do, we're looking for another rock star. And so that's the attitude we're going with. All right, the second thing on there is bus transportation policy. I wanted to share with you, and I think I sent a letter out about this, but I wanted to share with you some of the things that we adjusted over the summer. And so we've had challenges over the years with the bus ride length for students, and one way to change that is to add a bus, and if you add a bus, there goes your dollars. You're adding significant costs to the district. Another way to change that is to apply our board policy, which I would say we've been okay not applying. It's just we've gone with what we've always done, and I decided to make a change. And so this summer, group stops were identified for center school and hall school bus runs. We have about approximately 12 group stops for the center school group in the morning and afternoon, and 12 for the middle school. Now when I say group stop, our policy says that students can walk up to a half mile for middle school and up to a quarter mile for elementary school. We made logical decisions on our group stops, all right? And so we had some questions. We obviously had some complaints. People are used to their door-to-door service. We don't have a single complaint right now. We've worked with every single person. And I wanted to bring that up just so you knew what your job was in that. And your job based upon this policy is that if someone complains and they don't like how I've responded, then they would come to you and we would have a hearing. There's nobody right now that's complaining. And so, which is really good. We worked with a lot of people. I would say, I'll give you a good example. In St. Moritz, if you know that neighborhood, the St. Moritz neighborhood, we made 8 stops into 3. And it's saving time because they're all there. And it was really funny because I had a parent who was unsure about how this was going to go. And she called them after the first day of school and said, my son couldn't wait to get to the bus stop to hang out with his friends. Perfect. We even had a parent, and I told you we had some complaints. We did have a parent call and say, why did you not give us a group stop? And I said, because I didn't like, it was somebody that had to walk over the overpass on the highway. She said, we do that all summer long. Perfect. Is that a volunteer for a bus stop? We did it, and we made the changes. I will say that what we will do once we have heavy snow is that we're going to reevaluate all of those group stops to make sure it's still safe. And most of these are like right next door or diagonally across. I think the longest walk is like 300 feet, but they're making sense. Your neighborhoods, there's a couple in there. It just, we're going into sending a bus into a dead end to turn around to pick up a child, and going into the other dead end to pick up a child and turn around, and then leaving when we could just pick up at the corner. So I wanted to share that with you so you knew kind of what's happened, and we'll notify parents through our messenger system if we adjust away from any of the group stops. But so far, there's no complaints that have not been resolved at my level.
Our K3 are walking less than...
Yes, significantly, yeah. And even, Herb, that's a great question, because even the middle school students, so if I had a 5th grader and an 8th grader, I have the 8th grader walking to the 5th grader's spot. So the pickup and drop off is there. So we did that in a couple locations so that the older student is the person walking. Same thing with the lower level. If we had kindergartners with 4th graders, the kindergartners being picked up at their house, but the 4th grader is walking to their house and the 3rd grader is walking to their house. But they're much shorter. Some of them are like 30 feet, but it's now group stop.
They have 12 group stops, but you have individual stops.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's certain spots where, and I follow the policy as far as safety goes. The blind curve, I'm not going to put a group stop or have somebody cross the road there. We didn't do that. We looked, we drove a lot of routes. If you saw my little black car sitting outside of your house, I'm sorry, we were looking here at your bus stop. We also did a lot on Google Maps and to see what the road terrain, the road looked like. Is it on a hill? Is there room to walk in the grass off the road, or do you have to be on the road? We looked at all those things, and I appreciate now that they have the roadside mower for the town, because now kids can actually walk on the side of the road too, or into the grass.
We don't have any students crossing, say, 74 or 92.
No, they pick up
On the other side.
on their side.
And why does it have the 9 through 12 there? Is that curtain in any way, or that just part of
In
the
the policy.
boilerplate? Okay.
Good question. I would say boilerplate. I have a
That's
feeling
a trick.
this is going to actually, Kiara, bleed up to you. I think that they could look at stops for the high school and do a similar thing.
I think it's already like that. Our group stop is at the end of the cul-de-sac, and you
Okay.
walk all the way from the end, all the way to the bottom of the cul-de-sac, and it's a hike.
Good. All right, so I just want to make sure you saw the policy, and if someone approached you, you knew what kind of your role was, you know what my role is, and kind of justified my decisions. Moving along. Sorry.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
The 1 hour each way?
Yeah, the 1 hour is as best you can. There's a couple, it turns out that there's lots of kids that live up off of Schofield Road. That bus store is packed. And so when you run your routes, you try and keep them under an hour. And now that we've done some group stops, she's much closer to that. The first time they ran her route, group stop, her run was about 1 hour and 17 minutes, which is a long time to be on that bus. And so we've shortened them now. We'll see how they go, or as they get more efficient over the next couple of weeks. We can reevaluate with the bus company, and we will. But we aim for under that hour. And that's where the complaints really came.
Right.
My kid's on the bus forever. So.
My question doesn't necessarily come under policy and transport. Maybe it does, but as far as the buses are concerned, is that separate? The maintenance of the buses,
Oh yes, yeah, it's in their contract.
and the rotation of the
Mhm.
buses over 3 or 4 years?
It's in their contract, yes. Very specific.
And that's sticking with the contract?
Yeah.
Okay, moving on.
The Cape Policy Service option, this is something we talked about at the retreat. And this is, I think you're going to have to table your discussion point tonight. We've gone back and forth with them about what we're looking for, and we've seen 2 different prices. Really what we're looking for is not necessarily an audit, which their initial audit price they came back to us was $8,350, and that's based upon a number of students, which I thought was a little crazy, a little high. What we're looking for is an online database, and I was going to show you, but I can send you the link. Basically what it is it's just a searchable database of all your policies. If you wanted to see your transportation policy, it's directly linked to the CABE website, but it's your policies. You type in transportation, and it lists every policy that has to do with transportation. It is much smoother. They do your updates for you. It's much smoother, and that cost is significantly cheaper. It's like under $3,000, and there's an annual cost to that, obviously. But I'm going to have to get more information because I think they didn't quite understand what we were looking for. And I would say if it's $8,000, it's not going to be worth our dime. But if it's under $3,000 to maintain your policies and make recommendations about, here are the policies, like I showed you at the retreat, here are all the new policies that we have to update. They give you the suggestions right away. You don't have to pay your attorney fees. You don't have to, spend time going through things. All you do is you get your policy group, you read what the recommendation is, and most likely you're going to adopt it. You can still make it your own though. But then they upload it and it's searchable. Much easier to use.
So we'll come back to that again.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Grants for clubs. We received a notification of a grant that the PTA is housing for us. It had to go to a nonprofit, and we got the grant. The grant's for $25,000 this year and $25,000 next year. And so we're in the process of completing the paperwork. It's a little convoluted, but we're in the process of completing the paperwork to access the money. And this is for clubs. And so we have some great ideas already for these things, but we're going to be able to add some additional funds to this, and it was guaranteed. We also worked with Human Services for a smaller grant of approximately $5,000, and she got it. I think it's a grant through DCF, and we're going to be adding. If you've been over to Hall School, this is the gym. They've not really been able to climb up to the top of the rock wall. We're getting 2 self-belay systems, and basically it's a piece of equipment in the ceiling that you don't need to be the person on the ground holding the rope. You clip in, and if you start to fall, it catches you. And so these are all over the place in rock gyms, and so we're going to get 2 of them, and we'll be able to extend the rocks back up. The rock wall just has to be checked on an annual basis, and the belay systems are checked on an annual basis. But rec could use it, they could do a club, we could do a club after school, we could use it in PE, so there's a lot of uses for it. And I want to ring the bell at the top, and I haven't been able to do that yet.
Going back, I have a question about the clubs.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the policies you had mentioned, you can ask for a grant to pay, for small district to pay for buses, to fund the buses for clubs.
Mm-hmm.
But it says that we have to apply.
That grant application is closed. That was open for a very short period of time, and it's really for larger districts. There was a small set aside for small districts that allowed for some buses, but not for only buses. It was still limited to 20% of the grant. So, yes.
I will tell you that this town could use a grant writer. Because
that was, if it's a small window, you have to catch it.
Yeah. We can use some of this money for transportation, and we wrote it that way, so it's a balance of equipment, paying salaries for, or stipends for people that run the clubs, the transportation, one of the things Ken just approached me about, and I'm hoping to have a presentation next meeting, is that the person that's interested in moving to the makerspace is really interested in virtual reality and the goggles, and you can get a classroom set of virtual reality goggles, and you can build places with them. There's 1,000 things they can do with them. They can take them places, it's incredible. And so that's something that could be a club as well. So we're looking at cutting edge things like that, not just general, something really simple after school.
If there's someone in town that has an interest in supporting or being part of administrating or helping with clubs, should they contact you?
Yeah, we're trying to start high-end and small in District First, at both Center and Hall, with people, because it's contractual. It's in our contract for clubs. And then if we can get an expert, and I'll give you an example. There's RC cars that you can build and pull apart, and kids love doing those things. If we had an expert RC car racer in town, or we could call the Time Machine toy company and have somebody come out to work with our students in a club, that's the type of thing. It would have to be supervised by one of our folks, but it's definitely something. I want to build a tiny house or a shed or something like that. And I know Phil Monty has done that in the past. So there's things like that that we're looking to do. So I'm hoping that's the direction we're going. Is trying to get the community in, but you have to have someone internal that is going to drive the majority of that club.
It's useful though to know what specialties are in the community. So for example, I visited an after-school program once in Plainville, and they had a person who lived in town who was an Olympic fencer. Had no background, no connection to the school, no kids, but they brought her in, because she was happy to share it with the kids. And I've never seen a group of middle school students so entirely absorbed. Nobody moved a muscle until she said go. So just thinking about capitalizing on some of the expertise that we must have in town.
Yeah, and we're trying to be unique, have clubs that set us apart and that are exciting for kids, that they're going to want to do.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
You might consider surveying them and see what they're interested in.
They do.
Yeah,
they do.
Great.
But sometimes they don't know. They don't know some of the wild things that we can come up with that are out there. They just don't have the experience.
Right.
Okay,
moving on to the more exciting oil tank.
Oil tank is done. It's complete. Donna and I are gonna sit down and start the process for reimbursement now. We had asked for $135,000 for the oil tank, including contingencies. We spent $115,000. We are well under budget. And that contingency, yes, I know, right? That contingency was really if we had any issues, a small leak, or something happens as they're in the removal process. We are anticipating that we'll get back 64.64% of that cost that we spent, and that's what we'll be applying for. So, good news, and I'm going to be sending a little postcard to Jackie Jacoby and say the oil tank is done, the oil tank is done. Last thing on my report, the oil putting the schools was great. It was very exciting. We had all the district employees. It was a little different than we've done at the WIllington Firehouse. They donated the space to us, so it was a space that has AC. We set up the tables and decorations. It was the staff was extremely excited about what we did for kickoff, and I think we'll do it again if they'll allow us to do it. Wendy had breakfast over there. WEA and I sponsored lunch that day, so it was a really good kickoff for us. Some of the training, just so you're aware of what was happening. We did this de-escalation training that day. There was training on our new assessment program, iReady, which you approved last year, that replaced STAR. And we also started our discussions on Portrait of the Graduate. Thanks to the folks that were able to attend that day. I know that some of you had your own things to attend to that day. And the staff, thanks for staying to watch the movie with us. It was meaningful. The meet and greets were huge. They were very, very well attended. And our enrollment as of today is 435 students, which was one student off of where we said we were going to be. So pat ourselves on the back for an accurate number. CES has 232 and HMS has 203.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, let's move on to the financial reports.
All right, bless you.
Starting with the current budget.
All right, so 1920, this is pretty consistent for this time of year. We have ordered materials and salaries are encumbered. I wanted to point out a couple things that might jump out at you. You're going to probably see Program 1 Center School, negative 3.4. Why is that negative? That's because we haven't settled the grant application. We haven't applied the grant to that. So there's more money there. It's not in the negative. All right, it's just that we haven't made the adjustment. And the reason why is because we're still hiring. Once we're done hiring, then we'll make our adjustments, and it'll probably be next board meeting that we'll do that you'll see any transfers that we need to do to balance out the salary items there. HMS, I looked at and thought was high, and that's because the middle school math position and the school-wide enrichment position are not encumbered. So they're still in that balance remaining, which makes up a good chunk of that amount. Not the entire amount, but it's a good bit of it. Special ed is consistent because we don't have bills for any of the outplacements. If you continue to go down, all the other accounts are appropriate at this time of year. We would expect the PD, the Program 6, to have 50% because we haven't done our professional development yet. We've just started. Same thing with maintenance, we've just started. And system-wide support, because that's our IT contract and all of that's not encumbered. So everything else is pretty consistent. I just wanted to point out a couple that why are they a little bit higher or a little bit low. Questions about that?
Yeah, can you explain the special ed again?
Yeah, so
It's a substantial amount of money.
It is, and
over
some of those things are outplacement. Some of them are positions that are not filled yet, paraprofessionals. Some of it is...
Yeah, but didn't the outplacement, didn't we do that at the beginning of the year?
No, because you don't have a bill yet.
Yeah.
You mean like, did we get charged for it yet? No. We get billed, sometimes we get billed for those at the end of June. We have to press to get the bills for them. So it's a reason I have meetings with just the special ed director and Donna, so we can stay on top of where we believe we are based upon the billing and hours and services that students are getting.
So when we outplace, we don't really know how much it's going to cost.
We do, but they don't bill us right away, and we don't encumber it until we know the exact number. But, you know, I could say, we keep an Excel spreadsheet, or in our accounting software, we can't do it because you have to encumber it, so we keep a spreadsheet that shows, you know, the 663,000 you see there.
Yeah.
It might show 4 outplacements that, for a total of $390,000. And then the transportation is another 60. We can account for where those dollars are supposed to go. Make sense?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, moving on to the second attachment
All right,
for
so-
last year.
1819.
I have another question.
Oh, sorry.
On the curriculum and staff development, we had a substantial amount of money that we did not spend in that area. I mean,
Last year.
could we have had more professional development? Could we have purchased items that we didn't purchase? Or, I mean, the figure that we have here is a substantial amount over and above what we appropriated.
You mean from 1819 or 1920?
1818 to
18 to 19.
20.
We had money left in there because it was part of how we were covering because of our budget freeze. And so in 1819, if you look at 1819,
That's the second page?
that's the second page, and it shows 28%. We could have spent every dollar of that, but we held that money.
But that was the time we froze.
Correct. But what is in 1920 is just because we just started the school year. So I know that someone just asked for $8,000 for professional development yesterday. We're assessing those things. So we have, that money's going to be used. Yes. 1819, I apologize, this is different than what I shared with you because we had a change. It shows that we're giving back $5,559. Don and I, after all the encumbrances cleared, we thought it was going to be just under $3,000. And then the business office found 4 entries in insurance that were reimbursements to retirees. And so it added an additional $2,500 back. I would love to have spent every dollar of that because we were on a budget freeze. But I'm just going to remind you that that shows how close we were and that we didn't have to go back to the town. How closely we managed our money. We had $5,000 left on an $8 million budget, on a budget freeze. If we did not freeze, we would have been going back to the town. So yes, absolutely. I would have loved to have spent all the professional development money, but we would have been going back to ask for money.
Well, can we put that money into our little contingency
It's a
account?
great question.
It's
You-
not much, but
You
it's
can
worth
ask,
something.
and it's now 2%, but it doesn't matter because it's such a small amount, but you can ask, if the board wants, you can ask to move that money in.
So we have access to it in the future if we need it?
If they approve it, correct.
So for people who remember, that's the contingency account, that the Board of Finance would still need to approve our spending anything of that account, but they also need to approve us to put it into that account. But we're allowed to put in up to a certain amount from any unexpended funds with their approval. So if we do wish to do so, we have to make a motion to that effect.
I would like to make a motion that we suggest to the Board of Finance that we might like to deposit the $5,559 left from last year into our contingency fund.
Second.
Okay?
That's not a contingency fund.
What's it
It's
really
a
called?
Something else.
It's called.
You can't call it a contingency.
I believe it's called the 1% account, but now it's called the 2%
No,
account.
I thought that too. That's what I thought my mind is.
I literally believe on the document, it says the
It says
1% account.
Okay.
Okay, so a friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
I think
1% account.
we'll get the name correct, we know what we're asking for.
Do we have to give them a reason why we're putting it in there? Or?
So we can use it for future,
Unexpected
In
expenses.
case we have.
Because we have frozen the budget, and that was a hardship for our school. And that shouldn't really happen. But
Generally, that money that you have in there now is if you have extensive special education costs and you want to access that. That's something that Donna and I watched all year long during our budget freeze to say, do we need to go and ask for that money? It's not a lot. I think there's about 30,000 in there.
We have a cap on it anyway, don't we?
Well, the cap, I mean, 2% every year is $160,000. We're not asking for $160,000.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Any additional questions on the motion? All those in favor of moving $559 to the 1% account signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, signify by saying nay.
I was an eye, I missed it.
Okay.
5,000?
It was 5,000.
5,559.
$5,559.
5,559.
Is it possible, point of
No.
information?
No, not from the audience. All those who are abstaining signify by raising your hand, or, no, did I, okay, I only missed that one. Okay, so we will ask the Board of Finance if they will do that. Okay, thank you.
So the motion passes.
The motion passes unanimously. Okay, food services, the last of that section.
All right, food services, this is the final for 2018-2019. And I'm going to point out here that it looks like we have more money than we do, and I'll explain why. So the end of the year fund balance, if you look towards the bottom of the page on the last column on the right, it says 16,559. Don't forget we borrowed $5,000 from the town. And that's at the top right, and it says due to general fund. So our fund balance end of the year is actually $11,559 because that $5,000 can go back to the general fund, which means we're $8,000 shorter than we were last year. This is why we raise lunch prices, because the number that you really need to be at here is 20,000, and that allows you not to have to tap into the general fund to cover yourself. It allows, and it's really because the reimbursements are so slow. They're 2 to 3 months behind sometimes. So as Wendy's buying food and milk and she's getting reimbursements, they're slow to come back to us. And so we were under $1,000 for certain points of the year. And that's why they had to cover it so we could purchase food. So does that make sense? So the end of the year fund balance, once that 5,000 moves back, is really $11,559 in the food services account. Questions about this?
The fund balance in the middle of the page is 16,558. And down below it's 16,559.
Yeah, they might have rounded.
Difference there.
They might have rounded. This comes out.
We raised the prices this year slightly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that will probably affect the fund balance a little bit.
For sure, it should.
Maybe put us back and.
It should. And having we just had a retirement of Linda Nichols as the head chef. She'd been there for years, so when you hire someone at a lower rate, because they don't have as much experience, you'll save a little money there on salary. So you'll have to evaluate your lunch prices again next year, but this is a good document to do it off of to say if we have our target number, then you can recommend to leave your lunch prices alone and ask for the waiver and don't touch them again. But you're aiming for that, because if you look across the row of fund balance from 14-15 to now, and you go 40,000, 34,000, 23, 19 to 11.
It's not a good trend.
That's not quite the trend we're looking for. 40 was a lot, but.
Well, we'll check in on that again later in the year. Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business. Approval of the minutes from the August 13th board meeting. They're in your packet. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from Tuesday, August 13th.
Thank you, Tracy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steph. Any questions or corrections?
One possible correction on page 1 under Donna Cook, the burden will have been borne possibly?
Instead of bared.
As a resident
Yeah.
of Connecticut?
Yeah, that's just a clever typo, okay?
Are you okay with how we're reporting out? We had a long conversation about this. Are you okay with how we're reporting out what people's comments are? Just, it's basically paraphrase. Here's the gist of what they're saying. Are you okay with that? Without?
It is, it's always a challenge when you're paraphrasing the public's comments, and we certainly can't get them all word for word in here. So I think, because there's no quotation marks, and it looks like it's written in a language such as it doesn't look like it's a direct quote, then I think it's okay. But you do have to be cautious that sometimes it's easy to slip in something that's like a direct quote, and you want them all to be equally summarized, so it seems pretty good so far. I think it's important to capture the elements of what's discussed, so that's a tough balance. Okay. Okay, all those in favor of approving the motion on the table, which is to approve the minutes of Tuesday, August 13th, 2019, our regular meeting, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, signify by saying nay. Abstentions, it's me, because I was on vacation. Okay, motion passes. Next, minutes of the August 22nd retreat. Do I have a motion on the table?
I move to approve the minutes for the special retreat of August 22nd, 2019.
Thank you, Kiara. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steph. Because this was a retreat, it did not summarize the discussions, just listed the topics that we covered. So it's pretty straightforward. All those in favor of approving the motion on the table to approve the minutes of this special retreat meeting of August 22nd signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Say nay. Abstentions?
Aye,
Herb, Elena, and Ann. Okay.
since I wasn't in the room.
Yeah, you can't vote just because you were on the telephone and listened in a bit, but I'm glad you did that much. Okay. Motion passes. Moving on next, the CAIG Policy Services. I'd like to table that until next month when we have a better quote. Then moving on to the Board of Ed goals for 1920, our first review. So that's attachment 5, the one page in the back of your packet.
So we had some discussion about this at the retreat and tried to come up with some headings that really gave a good snapshot of what we were looking for and what the board was looking for. And I put a little blurb down the bottom of this just so you could see the difference between climate and culture, because I wanted to make sure that, and you don't have to leave that on there, but it was just so you could see the impact in schools of kind of what the difference was.
So this is our first reading. This is the kind of some of the revisions that we talked about at the retreat. We didn't wordsmith every word, so this is everybody's first look at this.
Can you explain the second paragraph? Well, with innovative culture, can you explain it? Well, how about the celebrate student differences? Is that open for discussion or?
Everything's open for discussion. This is our first look at it. We did discuss it at the retreat meeting to some degree.
Where did you get the term celebrate student differences?
I think celebrating diversity. Yeah, you could say celebrating diversity. That's the way it's commonly phrased. I would argue probably a similar meaning, but if there's a preferred way you would like to see it, you can certainly. Now's the right time to put that out there if there's language that you would prefer other than this.
Well, accepts student differences or something like that rather than celebrate.
I would argue that diversity is something that makes us stronger as a community, and it's something we should celebrate. Everybody learns differently and has different backgrounds that we come from, and bringing everyone together, we learn from one another. So I think it's, accepting isn't a strong enough word for me. In terms of, I understand what you're trying to say, that it's important that we are also very accepting and warm and embracing, accepting community. So I think celebrate includes that. Do you feel like it does not?
I
It's
feel
too strong?
the same way as Herb feels. I really do not like the word celebrating, because the difference could be different, they could be negative. We still have to accept them, we still have to accommodate those differences. There could be sicknesses, there could be mental problems, we still there. But I don't think we should celebrate those mental problems, we should help people. We should, so I kind of, unless you want to separate it somehow, because which differences are you really looking at? Give me examples, because I need examples. Celebrate students' differences.
I have a suggestion. If we change the word differences to diversity,
What do you mean, like that? Examples?
Would
Show
that
me
be
examples.
a
Like,
little?
for example, like
So-
what do
so-
we celebrate? Like,
So,
tell me
so
examples
for
we
example, people who come from different backgrounds, your children may speak a different language at home and may have the background, and they can bring that to the classroom and share their cultural experiences with the group, and then we learn more about their culture, and at the same time someone else would share their culture. So it's a learning about differences and how we all work together differently.
It enriches. It enriches the environment to have different.
It's one of the reasons we have an inclusive classrooms with people of all different abilities and skills as much as possible, because we want to learn from one another and work together. Society requires that we have the capacity to work with people from all types of backgrounds, all types of abilities. And I think that that's the goal of this particular goal, was to celebrate the diversity of our broad.
How about instead of differences? Because differences very wide, there could be different differences, and we have a lot of negative differences. So we really don't want to put, how about if we will put celebrate, if you like that word, celebrate students' different backgrounds, maybe.
That's too restrictive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about
More
celebrate
general.
student diversity instead of differences?
How about if we just respect students' differences?
But I think we have to, I don't know.
Because celebrate is kind of, there are so many negative differences now, so we don't want really to celebrate differences which are problems.
Okay.
So
We're not
how
talking
can
about
we,
problems, we're talking about differences, not problems.
But even something like, Elena, we had two in the building I worked in last year. There's a student with, well, even just autism, so autism awareness. We're not celebrating that somebody
yes,
has autism, but we're having a day where everyone wears a certain colored shirt to bring awareness to that. So it's not necessarily, it's not a celebration, but it sort of is, because you're kind of, you're looking at it in a positive way to embrace that
Embraces
person.
is what I was thinking.
that's a good example.
You're celebrating his accomplishments, his or her accomplishments and successes. Even despite the differences.
Would you be more comfortable with the word embraces student differences?
What do you think, embraces? I like it more, definitely, than celebrating.
This is the first reading of this.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Embraces is
I
better.
would need to think about what would be
Yeah.
a
Well, we
good
could still
word.
use diversity,
Okay.
celebrate, embrace diversity.
we still have a lot of
Embraces
hot topics on the agenda, and this is our first reading. So I think
That's definitely something we should get back to.
let's go back and do some research and do some thinking about different wording that might be broad, and we can look at this again next month before we finalize the wording. Okay.
How many readings are we going to have? 3?
Typically, we only have 2, but we won't go to the second reading until we've had some further discussion. And then the second reading would be the new language that we would have.
Is this the first reading, or
Yes,
is
this
this
is the first
just the
reading.
introduction of the,
No,
the first reading will be the second reading?
we discussed it at the retreat, so this is the first reading of what came out of the retreat. So if it's, not something that people are ready to move forward on, we may change that wording and we can move to a second reading at that point.
Yeah, I have another question. So how do you personally apply and understand the word innovative culture? Like meaningful collaborative relationships in an innovative culture. I just want to see how you understand. What did you mean by innovative culture?
Culture that embraces innovation so that we can always improve and find ways to move forward with new ideas.
That promotes creativity.
Right, that promotes creativity. Innovation is always good. That's how civilization has moved forward.
Like the makerspace. That's it.
I understand. That's what you meant.
Yes.
Yeah. Right?
But I personally think that because those goals, they're very important. They're like statement of what we are standing for.
Right.
So I think the wording should be as simple as possible. I think like innovative culture, I need an explanation because there is a little bit different stray towards it. So what did you mean? I think we should simplify it as much as possible. That's my
So one thing that we may do is share with the group again the handouts that came with the retreat where we had a number of examples. You might not have looked into the further packet. There are a lot of examples from some other towns and some other wordings to give you. These are actually quite simplified compared to how complex many other school districts are. So I'm not thinking that we need to get significantly more simple than this. This is already quite simplified. But I do think that having all of us look at the language and trying to make it as precise and inclusive of our diversity as well is useful.
Yeah, and I think if we want to suggest other words that you feel more comfortable with, I mean, I think we're all willing to listen and discuss it.
Yeah. I just know we have a lot on the agenda.
I think we all need time to kind of think about it and see, okay, how else could we?
For people who were at the
say that?
retreat, we've already absorbed it and thought about it for a month. So I think having more time to think about it and review those same materials might be really useful. Okay, so we will include that on the October agenda as well. So moving on to the Willington Public Schools facilities option. Why we have an audience tonight. So,
Emily, will you turn the TV for me? I apologize, this was clear on my computer. This is for the audience because they have it in front of you. It's not so pretty up there. So.
but at least it's something compared to what we don't offer anyway. So we do apologize for the small print.
But I'm going to go through it. All right, so what I did is I took the chart that we had with all the options on it, put a red X through what you eliminated last time. I left 4A and 4B, and then when I contacted the architect and asked him some questions about what we were looking for moving forward and the questions you had developed, I thought he was going to give us one price, he gave us three, so thanks to him for doing this. He created an option 7, an option 8A, and an option 8B. Let me explain what they are.
We were trying to narrow.
I know.
Yeah.
I think
We're trying to narrow it to the cost though, but if he wants to do 2 extras for free,
I apologize for that, but I think it's going to help, okay? So option 7 is what he put in there. The key word is repurpose. And one of the things that you decided was you did not want to tear down center school, right? You said we wouldn't want to tear that down, that building could be used for something else. So what he did was he made an option 7 where you're building a brand new pre-K through 8th grade building on the center school site with land acquisition and leaving the current building to be turned over to the town. I will tell you, he created something, and we've talked about this, that would be extremely hard because you don't have the land. You'd have to purchase a significant number of lots with houses on them to make that happen. But he was trying to give you a sense of, you know, you take, for comparison. So, for the audience who cannot read that, that says local share at $17,450,904. The state share is $18,835,597. Option 8A is one consolidated school on a brand new site that we currently do not have. That option, local share, is, remember, these are the updated 2019 prices, $21,719,550. The state share at 54.64% is $23,442,951. I don't think I need to go into any more detail about what that option is, right?
Yeah, I have a question though. Isn't there a different state percentage if it's new building?
It's 54.64.
It's always, whether it's renovating.
So-
No, renovate to new is 64.64.
So option
Okay.
7, 8A, and 8B are all
Oh, they're all
new
Brand new
buildings. That's why
buildings.
they're all
Thank
in
you.
the 54.
I understand,
Correct.
thank you. Okay.
Yes.
Here.
I have a question about, so this would require land acquisition, and is the land price included in there?
He's got it in option A, 8A, and he just left it as 750,000, just like he tried to do apples to apples because that's what he had done in other ones. If he said land acquisition, he put that number in as his placeholder, all right? And then the last option, 8B, oh, by the way, 8A, he asked me, and sorry, I made a decision, that does not have a central office. Okay? Option 8B is the same thing, but with an auditorium. And he answered the question in this document that I shared with you, because we asked the question, if we build the square footage, the pre-K through 8th grade building to the square footage we can, and then you add an additional 6,000, I'm making a number up, 6,000 square foot auditorium, you pay dollar for dollar on that. You don't get a single reimbursement, but you do not get penalized for it. We got penalized on, I think it was option 4A or 4B, one of those, I can't remember which one it was, I'd have to go back to it, because the building already existed and we're already over it, if that makes sense.
So you would not get penalized.
But you'd have to pay, you would get reimbursed for it. You would pay every dollar for it. So if the cost was $2 million, you'd pay $2 million.
And you would not get reimbursed.
And you would not get reimbursed.
So that has to do with the size, so they will reimburse us up to 68,498 square feet.
As of today.
As of today, that's the size, and that's the size they think we need for all of the classrooms and the gym and the lunchroom. But if we were trying to squeeze an auditorium into that, the classrooms would be much smaller and possibly inadequate. So if there's anything additional, say we wanted a swimming pool, say we wanted, and whatever it is we wanted, that additional above the 64,000 square feet is 100% paid for by the town. So it's not that it's specific to an auditorium. There's nothing about an auditorium that's special. It's over the yeah. We get so much space that they're willing to pay for based on the number of students we
So
have.
does the structure, the funding, does that cover not only the structure, but also the fixtures, and is there a contingency for that?
Like furniture, you mean? Or
He's got soft costs in
And
there.
also, does it include a gymnasium?
Yes,
Yes,
it includes the
it
gymnasium.
does, yeah.
And he's got soft costs in there for different things. And again, some items, this is a raw look. He's trying to give you a raw number based upon the square footage that you could build and the maximum that you could get reimbursement for, $365 a square foot. That's how he's coming up with this. So he's just trying to give you a snapshot of here's what it would look like for a cost. I mean, if you wanted to put gold railings in, Herb,
You can do it, but.
It's gonna cost more.
Why would the town have to do
check,
that?
I wouldn't put that in.
Well, sorry, question to you. So, as I understand, option 8A, this is an exact option which we voted for last meeting?
This
And-
was your option
Yeah.
5,
Option
that you
5.
eliminated and said, we now want it off-site.
Yes, and we were told that the price for that option for the brand new school is actually 18,776. This is
In 2017.
So then, how come we introduced old prices to the town? 3, it's not a big number, but when it is 3 million, it's a huge number.
Well, Lena, the.
No, maybe maybe we were supposed first to get the new numbers and then introduce it to the town. Because now we voted last meeting for 18,777,000
We voted on the
project.
option,
We
not
didn't
on
vote,
the-
we didn't vote for that.
I know, well, we did not vote for the money,
No.
but we voted for the option
We
with
voted,
that price.
we voted to ask them for updated
That's what I was gonna say,
costs.
that was the whole reason
for
we
that
waited for
option.
this
We
month.
didn't.
You're not
Stop.
Yeah.
You understand.
Then I'm misunderstanding
Yeah,
you, so
so-
please explain again.
So, when we asked, Kiara and me asked, how much would be the option to build a brand new school? And Phil's answer was, it's an option 5, the same price. So I'm not talking about it, okay? About the price, we did not touch the price. So now, so we voted hoping for $18,770. Now, well, but that's what the paper said.
I can explain,
Kind of,
I know what
yeah.
you're saying.
3 million is a difference. I mean, we were not fully, we really did not introduce town to the right numbers. So all numbers, 3 million, huge difference.
Do you want to explain, or?
So let's let
Because
Phil,
we all
let's
have
let
something
Phil
to say.
respond.
So the prices that you had on your initial 6 options were 2017 prices. And they said all along, those prices are outdated. You can take almost 25% and add that on top of the price that you have. And so we looked at prices that were from 2017 across the board, so we were comparing 2017 prices across. He did not update option 4A and 4B, but I can tell you, they're no longer 14 million and 15 million. He just did not update those prices for us because we asked him just for the one option, he gave us 3, of what would a new school cost for 2019 pricing on a new location. So that's the difference. Am I happy to see $3 million more? No, I'm not. But all of these prices, so if you take that, what we'll call 19 million, and you add the $3 million to it, you're taking, what, 1/7 of that, 1/6 of that? So if you take 1/6 of option 4A, you could add that amount to that too as a general ballpark number. So I don't want to say that the things that I have blown up on the screen or on your paper that I'm comparing the 2017 numbers to the 2019 numbers, because I'm not. I just wanted to leave the options that were left. But the 3 options that he has now is option 7, 8A, and 8B are all pricing that he believes would be a good ballpark for 2019. If he were to update 4A and 4B, I would think that they would probably be $16 and $18 million.
But the
And
price
Alina,
would be
have
higher than that, really, when you consider the site acquisition.
Which one? 8A?
That's something for
No, 4A.
8A.
8A has site acquisition built into it. There's land purchase built into it. It's in the number.
when you suggested, Elena, at our last meeting that we do that option 5, right after that it says Phil Stevens stated that he would seek updated pricing on the updated option 5.
Yeah.
So we, and then
I
he just
understand.
followed through on that.
But I think we should be more clear when we communicated to the town that the
That's what the
prices,
minutes do.
no, that the prices, when we had the community engagement, I know you mentioned, it's like, you said they could be 20% out. I was on one community meeting. But it's a little bit very hard to understand the reality that 20% is really 3 million more. that's a very different picture, for me at least.
Actually, I just did the calculation, it's 21% up. So
Is
you
what it
were
is.
very close when you said 20%.
I wasn't close, I was restating what you said. I'll take that credit.
Each year we
I
wait,
think-
it goes up more and more and more. So every year we wait, it's going up again.
And that's been stated since the data study was
So
done.
we're not taking
Right.
questions from the audience yet, please.
When Fryer presented in 2017 at the community events that were, they said, even that presentation, these numbers aren't accurate today, they won't be accurate tomorrow, because the costs keep changing. So that hasn't been a secret if you've been keeping involved with the process. And I think that when Phil did the presentations, he did the best he could with because we thought we would have to pay money to get an updated estimate, so we were trying to narrow the options.
And I want to relay something that's really important for all of you, is that if you vote today and you say, you know what, we want option 8B, we're gonna say, we're gonna make a recommendation to build a new school with an auditorium. You're not recommending a price. It's the building committee's job to create what they're looking for, and the architect that you hire and the firm that you hire, you're trying to work within parameters. And I joked with Herb about the gold banister. You could put that in, but your money's going to go in a different direction. So that number technically could go up or down depending on what the building committee, if it forms, wants for their ed specs, what they want in that building. If they want to add in, hey, we're going to put two huge gyms in and an auditorium, all your recommendation is specifically what you're looking for the future. We recommend we would like to renovate Center School. We're recommending we want to renovate Ball School. You're not saying to this exact dollar amount. This is really just a picture for you to say, here's where a professional has identified some prices for you to try and give you an accurate, somewhat accurate picture based upon what information they have.
Can I ask a couple of questions to clarify these? You mentioned central office, and you know the original understanding of building a new K through 8 was that there would be a central office.
Maybe or maybe not. So option 5 had it in, priced within, and priced without.
Okay.
And
But the bottom line picks it up, right? That bottom 18,773.
I'd have to go back to the
me
vote
too.
piece to see which one,
Okay.
and see if that one was in or not.
Okay,
No, it's
so
not.
of these 7, 8A, and 8B, is a central office included in any of those options?
No. But remember,
Okay.
if your central office is part of your 60,000 square feet, it is.
Yeah.
But if it's in addition to, it is not. If you go above and beyond your square footage based upon your enrollment for 8 years, your highest enrollment, that's the size of the building you can build. If it's 61,000 square feet and you say, we want a 20,000 square foot, auditorium and 4,000 square feet for the superintendent, the building committee could do that. But the building committee would make those recommendations.
Okay, and my other question was, when we're talking about repurposing hall, but that's
Hall's closed. That's
One is-
repurposed center.
repurposed center. One can, so how would that's a new school?
No, Hall, sorry, yes. It's a new school on Center School site in your backyard. And Center School is no longer a school, it's used for something else.
So you have 2 buildings on that site?
Right, but the Center
And then-
School would not be used as Center School anymore.
No, I understand, but you'd have 2 large buildings on that
You are correct.
existing.
And he tried to do that because his point was, you've asked not to tear it down, can you take that cost out so there's no more demolition costs in there? If I can I keep moving so
Yeah,
I want to make sure we have 2 guests here?
Yeah, I have a question.
I'd like to hold the questions until after we've had the presentations, and then we can open it up for everyone to have questions, and I'll let you go first.
Everything was discussing it here for the last half hour.
Okay.
And, I think everyone, including myself, should have an opportunity to ask a question.
I totally agree, and you will be the first person allowed to ask the questions after we've had the presentation. I just think there's a little more information we want to have, and then there may be even additional questions beyond that. Is that
Every
okay?
time I want to say something, you cut me off.
Okay.
Actually, you don't give me a chance.
I just asked questions of
And
you.
I would like to ask a question.
About this?
Is it about the numbers here?
Well, the numbers and also about the auditorium.
Okay, go ahead.
I think this is something that's been thrown in that wasn't in there before, and we had discussed it briefly. But what are some of the advantages of a auditorium for a K-8 school?
You have a community space for your school. Right now, you're in a gym, and so you usually have a real stage. You have, instead of bleachers, you have real chairs. If you have a theater program, you can use the stage and the chairs when it's basketball season and not fight for space. So it's one of the big, that's probably one of the biggest.
The auditorium really is, you don't use it that often.
You can teach classes.
Spend $3 million on a brand new auditorium, and you have 1 or 2 productions a year. You might have assemblies for certain groups, but the usage of it is what I'm asking. Is it?
Right now, Jason Phillips teaches all his classes on the stage at Hall School. So that it could be a usable space. Instead of giving him a classroom, he could continue to use a stage or an auditorium for teaching classes. He could.
Well, if I try to sell this to the town, I need more than that.
Sure. And honestly, that's just something that was added in because it was a question. And so he did us a favor and said, I'll give you a price on it. I wasn't actually expecting a price. I was just asking if the question was, if it's a 6,000 square foot auditorium, is it in addition? Is that, how are we paying for that? And it's above and beyond. It's you don't get reimbursed for it. That was where the question came from.
Okay, so let's move on then
Thank you.
to additional presentations, and we'll have more time for questions after that.
Okay, so there's 2 parts to this. One is, the name I couldn't remember when we met. Fuss & O'Neill is a company, how could I not remember Fuss & O'Neill? You had asked about a risk assessment. And one of the things we've talked about and you've heard about is risk in a renovation project. And all of these projects have different levels of risk. I talked to someone from Fuss & O'Neill, and basically what they said was, well, we could do 3 levels of risk analysis for you at a good dollar amount, and there's different levels. And so I figured I'd share with you the levels, and then let the people that have, they do a portion of this for their living, speak to some of the things that you may or may not see in a renovation or a new building. Kind of a pros and cons list that's from a professional. So their lowest level is just basically a walkthrough visual. I would argue we just did that for free with 2 professionals. Thank you very much. We spent the holiday on Monday walking through the 2 buildings. And basically what they said was there's no testing. It's about $3,000, and they just make a list of potential things that you could have a problem with, that they see. I think we already know you could identify some of the things that you saw while we were there. Option B is limited testing with with the visual, so it's a balance. You test some things and then just do a visual inspection of others. Your total is about $10,000 to do that. And then your last option is test everything you can. What do you have that could potentially be a hazard in the building, that could be an issue, that could increase your cost? And that risk analysis was, she said, was between 10 and 20,000, and she said there's a big plus sign after the 20,000 because it could get significantly more expensive depending on what they open up, what they find. So as a result of this information, and I asked if you were okay with me reaching out to Aaron and Catherine, because this is their field, and Aaron Krieger is in the audience, and Aaron works for Consigley Construction out of Hartford. He's been in this business for a long time. He has 2 kids that they live in town. And, you know, just was the project manager for Sandy Hook. So these are folks, and Catherine works at UConn. I didn't get your bio. But I figured it'd be good for them just to share some information about what they saw in the buildings, what some of their concerns were, what some of their, you know, hey, this is no issue, and then speak to the options that are left. I did share with them option 7, 8A, and 8B before they came, so they could also get a sense of, you know, what could be the issues there. So, do you want to know, Aaron, do you want to speak to just your background really fast?
Yeah, I mean, I guess 20 years in construction, just preface it, I'm the guy who builds the building. I get involved once the documents are done, so I'm kind of the muddy boots on the ground. I've done 6 schools in Connecticut, the last one being Sandy. I was a project manager for the Sandy Hook rebuild, so, you know, a decent amount of school experience. I've done 3 renos, 3 new, you know, deal a lot with towns and, you know, what their choices are, and there's never an easy decision, so don't anybody feel bad for arguing, because there's never an easy decision, so. But yeah, I mean, and I guess I just want to kind of say, I have my own opinion, but I'm here just to talk about value, because I think I heard conversation about dollars and cents, and the problem is the dollars and cents you see today may not be the dollars and cents you see 3 years from now, and it may not be, after you have somebody like Fuss and O'Neill come through the building, it may not be the dollars and cents you see, you know, down the road. So you just have to kind of think about what programmatically and value-wise gets you the best. Don't buy a used car and put new brakes on it and then find out that it's broken 2 years later. You know, so that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Catherine, you want to give a little
Sure.
bit of background?
I'm Catherine Viveris. I'm a resident of WIllington. I have 2 kids at Center. So I'm here as a parent and to support whatever decision you guys make regarding school. And like Phil said, I work at UConn. I've been there for the last 11 years. But prior to that, I have 15 years construction experience, similar to Aaron. In fact, Aaron and I work together.
The learning corridor.
So it's a small world in construction. And I have done a variety of projects, Montessori schools, magnet schools, casino, airport. And at UConn, as you can imagine, it's a gamut. We're doing utility work to, you know, just renovating historic buildings. But we have the same considerations that you guys would regardless of those students. And that is, for us, is number 1, safety and making sure that the students are safe, they're not exposed to any hazards. So as a parent and an expert, that would be like my first priority, to bring that awareness to you as a board. And like Aaron said, regarding the budget and the schedule, there are more risks with renovation projects versus new projects. So I think as a board, it would be best to identify what is important to you and to the community regarding the school options, and just understanding what the limits are. You know, with renovation, you're limited to that footprint. You can change it and make it look pretty inside, but you're still going to have the maintenance issues. There's a lot to it when you're renovating, and having done both renovation and new construction, it's certainly a more streamlined process when you build new. It may take more time. Obviously, it's a little more money that you guys have seen. But in the end, whatever decision you make, just be confident in what you're doing, and it's going to be for the right reason.
So can we talk about your walkthrough? We have option 4A and 4B, so they're both renovate, one's renovate center, one's renovate hall. And so talk about some of the risks that you saw in those 2 buildings, things that you had concerns about, and you know, some of the things that you thought would be okay.
So I think, and just add to whatever. So I think, so hall school, I'm personally less familiar with that because my kids are at Center. So I feel like I know center school more, but I want to talk about Hall because that was sort of fresh eyes for me. And the first thing I noticed going in was we obviously had to cross a major highway, so Route 32, we had to cross that. So that to me, safety all the way, is that really the ideal location? No, but could it work? Possibly. You walk in, it's a beautiful historic building, there's some new additions to it, but once you get inside, there's, to me, it was a very complex layout. There's many ramps, and again, from a safety perspective, if I was an emergency, you know, like the fire department, I mean, how would they even get to where somebody is? So, so when I look at that perspective, it's just the layout in itself was very complex. The next piece was the fact that I believe the town does not own that property. So that to me is kind of a deal breaker. So unless the town decides to purchase that land, if that's even a possibility, to me, whatever option is for the Hall School is probably not feasible. Jumping to center, I don't know if you want to.
Well, I guess the other thing with Hall, I would say, is you know, Kevin was talking about complex footprint. I mean, swing space in that kind of building, you would need to move those kids someplace else. I don't see, just walking through that building, and it's really almost a 4-story building, you have, you know, those rear stairs are like a 1.5-story drop. Not really ideal for having all the kids be able to be in a consolidated, there's like no space when you walk around the school that you could put the kids and have all them in one side where you renovate another. I have renovated active existing schools in the past, but there's always either been portables outside, where they put them in portables, or they shipped a portion of them off to another campus. You know, I don't think in the town have really that option internally. You'd have to look probably externally, I would assume, to ship those children off to another district if you needed to gain space. So just that complex footprint in Hall, I mean, I walked around and just was shaking my head a bit saying, I don't know how you would ever do it without a lot emptying the school and basically gutting the entire school.
They talked about vertical walls.
Yes.
They're about just the exterior walls.
Basically, I think you'd have to take everything out except for the exterior walls, and at that point, number one, you don't know what you're exposed. I mean, we poked our head in a lot of interesting spaces. But, you know, but ultimately, what you see, you know, paying Folsom O'Neill $3,000 to walk around, I could have told you that they took out the asbestos elbows in the boiler room, you know, years ago and replaced them with fiberglass, and they've done some updates over time, but I've also know that you don't know what you don't know, right? And you haven't opened up walls and ceilings to see, and if you pay the $20,000 for Folsom O'Neill, what they're going to want to do is literally punch holes in your walls and your ceilings to find stuff. You know, and that's, besides being destructive before you get to the point of, you know, wanting to do the project. I worked at American School for the Deaf. We quadrupled our asbestos budget because they found stuff when they started demo and gutting the building that they just didn't know was there. And that was actually a Folsom O'Neill job. Folsom O'Neill did the original assessment, but you don't know what's behind the wall. They didn't do the destructive testing at that location. So I just think, generally speaking, Hall concerns me, just from a construction standpoint, that there would be a fair amount of money wasted to put the kids someplace else and to make that building work efficiently for the program that probably needs to go in it if it's going to house K through 8.
And remember that, sorry, 4B does not have swing space. He did not build swing space into that because he thought there was going to be a place for students to go. And after they walked through the building and said, not so sure about that, especially if there's a major floor plan renovation. So it's just important in the pricing.
It's also like a 3.5-story building, which, for the sake of, I don't know the exact regs on pre-K and K, but I know they all have to be on ground floor and they have to have access to things. That can be that'll be a real bear in Hall. There's not, like, you can't walk 50 feet without hitting a ramp or a stair.
Hard to even know which floor is
Which
the
floor
ground
is
floor.
front.
Yeah, which ground, right.
Anything else for Hall?
Just Aaron touched on it a little bit at the beginning regarding value. I think that's something important too in evaluating the option is that if you're gonna spend the money anyway on, let's say a brand new building, brand new site, I think it'd be important to know what you're getting, and then also with the renovation, know what you're getting or not getting. The one obvious thing that I can see from building new and having a brand new site, brand new building, you don't have that maintenance cost for probably 5 to 10 years. Whereas building new at Center, building new at Hall, or renovating new at either one of those, you're still gonna have those maintenance costs because they're two separate buildings, and the interior is what's being renovated, not so much the exterior. And you're always gonna, because you're dealing with existing building that is however old, you're gonna continue to have that maintenance. It may be less, but you're still gonna have that high maintenance cost versus a new building where you might get some relief on the maintenance cost on a new building for like 5 to 10 years. So regarding value, I think that's important to point out with respect to that.
What about Center?
Center, well, so Hall is also an ADA nightmare too, to some extent. ADA.
Oh, ADA.
So when they Connecticut adopted the new code back in 2018, last fall, they actually have, I mean, there was always an ADA code, but they've officially put it in the building code now that there's no...
It's a federal agency.
Right, there's no gray area now, it's within the Connecticut building code. So, you know, when you have ramps, they gotta be at a certain pitch, and if they're not, they have to have handrails, and that all adds up, particularly in Hall, of having a lot of different levels could be challenging, I guess, on that building.
And expensive.
Yeah, that goes with it. Center, I guess Center, I don't know, Center was a slightly better footprint. It's an awfully small building for swinging kids, you know, from one side to the other. You know, it's again a concern, I think swing space would be a concern of either school. That one's got a little more option, but you still would have to find, you know, I guess my thought was, hey, could you put some kids in Hall? You know, could you put basically fourth graders in Hall and, you know, try to make it work? That would be up to somebody else to decide. But generally speaking, the building, the layout is a little bit better for being able to reuse some of the classroom spaces, but there's still some unknowns with regards to those spaces. There's a lot of mechanical system strangeness going on in that building. A lot of repetitive systems. Still seems like you'd have to fully gut a lot of that space. Maybe you can keep some corridor walls, but you'd have to gut a lot of the other space. The exterior skin on that building's in pretty rough shape when it comes to, there are some new brewer windows, but you know, you got single pane windows in the upper level. It just seems like you're going to be putting a lot of Band-Aids on that one as you rehab the building to go throughout. Plus, you still have an elevational difference between the two sides, so you still have that vertical transport issue where you need an elevator or a lift or something to get kids from one side of the building up to the other side of the building, depending on the layout. It did see a lot of asbestos seem to have been abated in visible areas, which was good. You do have wood frame construction in the upper level, which you have a lot of wood frame at Hall, but wood frame is definitely not as forgiving when it comes to meeting code. Right. Because now you're going to have to build a building that has to take a 30-pound per square foot snow load on the roof, and you've got to update that building fully, so you might have a lot of structural revisions that need to happen because they just didn't do that, right? And they didn't have the seismic codes and the things that we have today that they need to be brought up to. So, you know, that's what's not always pictured in the, hey, we're going to spend $365 a square foot from the state to renovate a building.
One of the things we didn't really talk about, but Erin pointed on it, is the fact that it's wood frame construction. I know when we build new or renovate, we're always using steel, you know, steel studs or just structural steel. And I believe there's going to be an insurance, you know, reduction, premium reduction in that. We didn't really tap into that, like in our discussions, but going new, I think there could be some kind of insurance savings there where the insurance premium on a wood frame construction might be more. I don't know if it's substantial, but that's something to consider when you're making that kind of decision. And as far as center, I agree with what Aaron was saying, it's fairly smaller, but, and there are multi-levels and basically everything you said, and some of the mechanical spaces I was surprised about. It seemed like there was extra space in there, but yeah, there's some duplicate systems, but there were some recent upgrades. And possibly that building could be repurposed in maybe as a town building or, you know, other programs that might be on the agenda for the town, but for a school, I'm not sure, in my opinion, if it would satisfy the needs of the school and of what you guys need for all the students. Regarding the risk of going renovation versus new, it's, in my opinion, I've worked in many projects for renovation with people occupying the building. I highly do not recommend that. So the best way to do it would be to have some swing space, have some classroom buildings and vacate the building entirely. So if that is an option for the board, the schools should be vacated and not try to work while the students are there. That's just my recommendation. I don't know if that's possible, but that would be my recommendation.
Because the other consideration with that is you pay for me, right? The guy, me, building the building, as long as I'm there, I'm getting paid. So, you know, the longer I'm there, the more it costs you to have me there.
Right.
You know, so when you do a renovation, you know, I looked at a job at Wyndham High School. I put a number on that job as a proposal. Didn't get it, worked too hard, but in any case, that job was like a 3-year job. That, I mean, it's just the general conditions, what we call the general conditions costs for us to be there were phenomenal because they needed to keep the kids in the building. We had to phase reno through the building. Right. So you got to consider that, like, hey, it sounds good to renovate a building, but you might be able to build a new building in 12 months and it might take you 18 months to renovate because you're trying to work around existing occupancy or existing issues that are in the building. So it's a cost factor as well that you kind of, I guess my analogy to, or my thought to Phil was it's kind of like you're putting bad money on bad money, so to speak, because if you got to pay for swing space and you got to pay to fix stuff that's broken in the school, you're really not putting the value into for me, the value is in the program and having the space for the kids.
Right.
Instead, you're fixing stuff in some of these renovations that you just need to do to bring it up to code. I mean, I've done 3 renovation projects, schools. One of them was Bennett Academy in Manchester. That was a full gut reno. It's a beautiful building. It was an awesome project, but it was a full gut reno because none of the spaces suited the needs of the program. I did Highland Park in Manchester. Pretty much all the spaces suited the needs. So it was like basically a rehab upgrade, code upgrade, pretty straightforward. And then I did Illing Middle School, which was an occupied reno. It took us a couple years to do, put an addition kitchen on, and then 2 years later they had to do windows. And then 2 years later they needed to add air conditioning. And then 2 years, so they just keep adding on to it, you know, and it's, you know, so, and that's a choice the town made to do, but it's, you know, it's, you're gonna keep putting money into it, particularly if you can't bring it fully up to date.
And just the footprint limitations of doing a renovation versus having the flexibility and engaging the students and the occupants in a new design versus being limited to this footprint. You're almost building your program, fitting your program into an existing space rather than building your building to meet the needs of the program. So that's something to consider as well.
Catherine, could you speak to, you talked about the importance of land. And I think you and I were talking about how Mansfield has really slowed down because they were looking for land and it's taking them a lot longer in the process. Can you talk about that for a new location and the importance of what factors kind of go into that?
So when choosing a land, I would recommend having a professional work with the town or work with the board or the building committee, wherever it starts. That part I'm not too familiar with the process, but there's like a site assessment that's a process in construction where you would hire somebody that knows the area and has gone through evaluating what type of land is out there, if it's farmland or if it needs to be remediated, or if it's a site that doesn't have to be remediated, then it's important to just know what's out there and hire a professional to work with you on that. And depending on what the fields, the acreage needed for the fields and what the school needs for the footprint of the building, to identify what that acreage is and work with that professional to find the different site options. The other thing is a lot of new sites may or may not have utilities, so it's important to look at sites that either have existing utilities, look at the age of those utilities, the water, the electric, gas, whatever, steam, if it's going to be, heated by steam. So those are important things. And then obviously location. That's, the saying, location, 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 that's really something from a safety perspective. How do you, what are the distance requirements? I don't know if there's limitations with how far the buses can go to. So that's also something that when you work with the site professional, they'll guide you through that process.
Well, thank you both for spending part of your holiday in the school.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Are there questions from the board specifically related to the walkthrough for our guests?
I would just like to ask of the options, which you think are most viable for our community?
So I can give you my opinion from a parent side and from my professional opinion. I think if the schedule and the budget were not the driving factors in this situation, I would by far go with new site, new building. I think the value going to, you have to look at the value of what you're getting. And I mean, I put some notes together for myself of what we would get if it was a new building, new site. And I mean, I can share them with you if you'd like. And then this is precisely why I would choose that one. And then Erin, you can voice your opinion. But the new school will be brand new. It'll be up to all building codes and handicap codes. Accessibility, so there won't be any accessibility issues for the new building. The layouts will offer the safest egress and exit points, egress and entrance points, and that's primarily, the fire department typically gets involved in that permitting. Energy efficient equipment, you might get some rebates from the CLMP. I know at UConn we have a whole program that works with replacing our lights, replacing our major equipment to benefit from those energy efficient rebates. The minimized maintenance costs that I mentioned earlier. Single resources for one school. This referring to like maintenance and staffing, overhead costs, principal, principal, you get two principals now. So. And I think, Phil, you mentioned that in one of the earlier presentations. New utilities, there's a little risk of failures. I know, especially at UConn, we've got antiquated utilities in the ground, and where the last couple of years we've been having a major push for replacing all those utilities because we were just responding to breakages. So with a new building, new site, all new utilities, you won't have to worry about that for 20, 25 years or however long they last. The school members and the staff would be an active part of the design process, and that's especially important because that's going to give you your outcome at the end of the day when the building's brand new and everybody moves in. You might get a few complaints, but you know what? They were part of that process, and they're going to be part of the success of that project. So They're gonna be proud of it, the students will be proud, the faculty will be proud just walking into a new space. And it changes the energy of going into a new building. Having built new buildings, and I'll tell you that first day on the middle school, the magnet school that I was part of, it brought me to tears, seeing all these new kids coming into this school, how excited they were, how the staff was just ecstatic with the new space that they had. It really brought me to tears, and that's something that you can't put a price on, you know. The latest technology. The other thing that UConn is doing is furniture, different furniture options. They have different learning styles now. A typical classroom might have been rows with seats. You know, they're changing it up a bit. They're bringing in some soft comfort seating. They're bringing in capsules. So there's different learning opportunities in the classroom that you can take advantage of with the latest furniture. And then probably most importantly, the new school will be more predictable with respect to your cost, your final cost, and your schedule. There'll be less unforeseens. So when you guys, when there's a contract with the contractor, you'll be able to say, okay, here's my GMP, or guaranteed maximum price. It shouldn't cost you any more unless you say, I want a new auditorium, or I want a pool, or I want, you know, something above and beyond what was in that original budget. But essentially, that to me is a comforting thing to know. When I manage a new project, I'm like, yes, I know I have a very good chance of coming in on budget and coming in on schedule. So I think that's important to know too. So pros wouldn't be helpful without a few cons. So I did also make a list, and I'll cut this short, but the process, design and land acquisition could take up to a year. And then construction, I would say, would take at least a year. So it would be, I would expect like a 2-year process for that. And then as a parent and a resident, I was thinking about what would make me decide more on if I wanted to go, if I would choose to vote on renovating one of the buildings. And I think I would need to have a better understanding of how a new school would impact my taxes. And I think as a taxpayer, I would like to know if my, taxes now are $5,000 a year. Is it gonna go to 10? Is it gonna be just 6,000? Is it gonna be $200 more a year? So I think that's something at the end of the day when, things start to move forward and a vote is ultimately cast for whichever option. I think that would be important to know, whether it's a new school or if it's a renovated project. So thank you for inviting us. It's a great opportunity, and we're here as resources for the town and for the board. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I guess I'll be brief, so.
Sorry.
I guess 8A is, I guess looking at the options, 8A is, I guess, would be my opinion, would be my choice, and that's primarily because I think budgetary-wise, you can build a program, you can build a budget, you can build a program, and you can make those two work. With the renovation, my concern is that you're going to end up spending some money, but we're not really going to get what we want. And frankly, if I'm going to go spend a bunch of money, to do something, I want to spend the money wisely and make sure it gets what we need. So I do have a concern with 8A with land acquisition. It'd be nice if somebody could give us some land or something like that. That helps. Obviously, part of your additional cost there in that is not only land acquisition, but it's land development. Right? You don't have a lot of site development. But I guess that said, my second choice would definitely be 4A. I think halls, honestly, unfortunately, somewhat of a lost cause for renovation just because of the building. It's a beautiful building, but not for what we need it for. My concern with both of the rental options in 4A is they just don't have the land. You would definitely need to have land. I mean, to have a school that doesn't have any field space, I mean, I guess for me it's important, it's nice to have the field space that goes with the school. So that you're not having kids go all over and, you know, even for community events and baseball and everything that we do, it's nice to have more central locations that you can go to. And I don't see how, without getting quite a bit of land at center, you could build a building and do field space. So I mean, I guess overall 8A, it just obviously comes with a bit of a caveat of what do you do with the land, how do you get the land, can you acquire the land? But I mean, pretty much everything Catherine said, I think the big thing is just you can put a budget together and make the project work within the budget. And that's what we do. I mean, I don't do it personally, but I have, you know, my company has estimators and pre-construction managers. That's their whole job, is to work with the design team through the entire job to say, all right, our original budget was $20 million. You're going to do your first set of design documents, you know, and at DD, we're going to do an estimate. Oh, you're at 22 million. We need to do something different, right? And you do that 2 or 3 times during the process, and you keep the project on budget. And then you can get rid of the gold-plated balusters that everybody wants, right? And to save money, but you know, that's what happens through that process. And you might not know till you get those construction documents at the end what that price is. And it is a hard thing. I know everybody's like, why can't you just tell us what the cost is? You can't, because it depends on what those choices are in the design that gets you there. So I think a new building will allow you to work within your budget a lot easier than a rental, without spending money on things you just didn't foresee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions from the board for our guests? Anything else? I promised you first question for.
I have no questions.
Ah, see? You used them all
No, they
already.
covered pretty completely.
Okay, so do we have a motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion. I move to recommend to the Willington Board of Selectmen that they appoint a committee to pursue the building of a pre-K to 8th grade school on a site other than the current Center Elementary and Powell Memorial Middle School.
Second.
Thank you. So effectively, that's option 8A, correct? Okay, questions and discussions on that option?
Yes, I just want to make sure, because of the previous discussion we had, is that certainly these are 2019 estimates, but again, they're just estimates. And the building committee will, the community create specs and come up with something a little more solid to then present to eventually make a proposal to Board of Finance. No.
So the process, the reason
Yes,
this is
I can't
just a
remember the
recommendation is that,
No, after the building committee, what
so
would that go from
it
there?
goes to referendum.
Right from the building committee?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Members of the Board of Finance might be on the building committee.
Right, of course,
It
on the
doesn't-
building committee,
right.
because it will have a
Right.
variety of people, yes. Okay, I just wanted to clarify. That's really the building committee's job to make these numbers firmer. And then the discussion about the land, obviously it's a big, and the development of the land is a big one too, so. It's tough for me to imagine a number. I mean, this is the number you see, so that's the one that sticks in your mind, but, yeah, land would be a big one. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thanks. Other, Tracy, I can't see you down the end because you're,
Sorry.
sit back.
You know, the 8A does not include the auditorium.
Correct.
And, I mean, to me, I think we should consider that. I mean, an auditorium, you know, most of the K-8, well, most of the middle schools that I've visited have all had an auditorium. And we have a great program going.
Yes,
You know,
I agree
year
with
after
you,
year,
yes.
we have a super program that's put on by our thespian group, and this option 8A does not include. I know it's costly, probably cost $2 or $3 million additional, and it would be a hard sell probably in the town. But if you had an auditorium, it would be used not only by the school, my staff, and K-8 students,
Of the town.
but also the community as well could use that for various purposes. So that, I know your motion does not include that, but it is a consideration. And in my mind, even though it probably would be a harder sell to the town, that if we don't do it at this juncture, then when would we do it? You know?
We're not gonna build a standalone auditorium, I think that's safe to say.
And that's it. And your thespian program goes back to the gymnasium, and there probably won't be a stage. So I don't know what they're gonna do.
It's worth noting that Ann's motion does not exclude an auditorium nor include it. That's the decision of the building committee. So this was for comparison purposes, and while we're calling it 8A, if the building committee wanted to have a discussion about whether or not there was an auditorium, that would certainly be open for discussion at that table. That's not for
So
us to decide.
what I was gonna say, I absolutely agree with her. An auditorium, all the middle schools I've been have an auditorium, and it's essential for the great program we have. Now, since we didn't talk about an auditorium, the 60,000 square feet, you don't think that would be enough to house an auditorium? Square footage?
I don't know what the.
Okay, so we don't have to call it
Yeah.
8A or 8B, we can
No.
just call it in the
Yeah.
school, and then definitely will be a big consideration for the.
And we can all go to the building committee
So
meeting
great.
and express our opinions at that point. Steph, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just think, I guess, I buy everything that Herb's saying. And I also think, I do think that Willington is minus a good comprehensive space to fit the whole town in for events or to book events coming into town, because we just don't have any place that's appropriate for it. And we have, you know, we've all sat on bleachers and watched Shakespeare and musicals and wished that the kids had a better place to perform in, because the quality of their performances are definitely much better than their performance space. And I guess I'd like to, as a board, I sort of feel like if the board doesn't say it, who does? That we put a priority on an auditorium being included, because it's just, to me, it's kind of, and I guess partly because I'm fresh from being with all the faculty and administrators and watching a film about Most Likely to Succeed, about the 21st century learner, and so much of what they do in that scenario is perform or display or, you know, do something that's way outside the classroom on their final projects and their learning. And we don't even have that option. So I guess I'm thinking about the space of the future learner, which would be quite different. And I can't see doing it without an auditorium, so.
Do you want to talk about what ed specs are and how to do that?
Yeah, I mean, ed specs are really, I mean, you guys can speak to ed specs. Do you help develop ed specs, Aaron, at all?
Not only.
Or do you just get handed down?
We read them during the estimating phase and maybe give them some guidance.
You want to talk to some of the ed specs of what are priorities for some other districts, what they've highlighted?
Every district is different. Like, I mean, just like, for instance, that Wyndham job we were dealing with, they had a lot, they have you know, like a jewelry program, right? And in their ed spec, like, you wouldn't normally see something like that, but they needed a space for like jewelry design. You know, so there's things that were important to that school. I mean, I would say there's a lot of repetitive stuff you see in ed specs, but
typical
things that are unique, right? If we're talking about, you know, a theater program,
film studio,
music program, film studio, green screen, you know, whatever it may be, you know, that's important to the program of the school and the identity of the school, then that's built in, but.
And that would be identified by the building committee, and you would hope that,
And the board then would have a process
You'd
with
hope.
that to provide input into that, so.
Yes.
Yeah,
potentially
yeah,
the community
yeah,
too,
yeah,
what
yeah.
they want in their
Yeah.
schools.
Yeah, it should be, because the auditorium question is a broader question about the community as well. Any other questions? Are we ready to vote?
I'm thinking back to, we have 3 people that have brought up the auditorium. Are we allowed to include that?
It's not our call to make.
Okay, very good.
It's not
It
our
would
call
be
to
our
make.
recommendation, but.
We're not even making recommendations. We can
Okay.
make recommendations to the building committee, if there's a building committee, if we vote for it.
Okay, very good.
First things first.
Okay.
Well, a motion could include, instead of 8A, it could be 8B.
We didn't say 8A or 8B in the
I
motion.
thought the motion said.
Yeah, we just said it. You want to reread?
Yes,
So
I'll reread it.
for the record, please reread your motion.
Okay, and I'll give this to Emily. I move to recommend to the Willington Board of Selectmen that they appoint a building committee to pursue the building of a pre-K to 8th grade school on a site other than the current Center Elementary and Hall Memorial Middle School.
Okay? Since it
Should
doesn't
we,
say we're
since
ready
it's been a priority in the survey, we shouldn't say anything about with enough land to include playing fields? I mean, that's not a design issue, that's
I mean,
something.
these-
Well, no, but now it's gonna be a requirement.
Yeah.
You have a land size requirement that if you go off-site, you have to be a certain acreage. You'll have to be about a minimum of 19, and I would assume that's gonna be enough land too.
That might
Okay.
grandfather us in for a little bit less if we stayed on current sites, but if you go to a new site, you gotta
Right.
play by the new rules.
Oh, okay, I
Yeah.
didn't know that. So it's already stipulated.
Yeah, this land size is a requirement.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, then let's go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion to build a new pre-K to 8 school on a new site signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. Okay. So now we're handing it off to the Board of Selectmen for discussion.
Am I doing that presentation, are you doing the presentation? I just wanna make sure that we're clear on that process.
To the Board of
They're
Selectmen.
gonna need, I
I
believe they're
suspect
gonna
we
need some
shall both
background.
go together
So-
and we'll do that.
There should be a
We will
presentation
come
to the
together
Board
and
of
do a presentation. Okay. Last on our agenda, before board comments is always present to speak. We like to give the audience a chance to ask further questions. If there was a point of information, someone had a question or something that had come up earlier that we didn't get them to ask, and I see a hand now. Lori?
Lori Sepulveda, 271 Turnpike Road. I'm currently on the Board of Finance, and just a real rough estimate, because we have received a thing on, if we was a bonding for $18 million, like a 30-year bonding. The first year would cost approximately, this is a real rough estimate, I just kind of figured this out, $200 for a house worth $100,000, and you know our valuations are based on percentage of the, so twice that, if your house is valued at $200,000, so $400 the first year would be the cost for bonding the school. Just, this is a real rough estimate, and that was for 18 million, so it would be a little bit higher, but just to give people a picture of what that would be.
It helps to
Yes, just
see
to get
the
an
size of
idea
the volume.
of, yeah.
I understand, thank you.
For 3 years.
Others present to speak?
Does that include the bonding of the library, which is?
This is just how it would affect the mill rate and the cost, an increase of your taxes from what they are right now.
You know, the library bonding is
They're still
phasing out, isn't it?
correct.
Well,
You know,
7
six-
years.
yeah, 7 years or so. Yeah, we're down to what, 6 years now, so. With that still in play, I think that's what they built these numbers on, with that current estimate.
So, but it does decrease as the years go. And then, also, when you're talking about that, Lori, were you talking about assessed value, or are you talking about appraised value.
Well,
You're talking
whatever
about
you pay on
You're
your
talking
appraised
assessed.
value, you don't, I mean,
No,
your
it's
assessed
assessed
value, which is always less than what your appraised value is. And that's what you pay your taxes on.
Right, but when, I'm just asking on your example, are you talking about 100,000 in assessed value?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
because it's
So
how
that's-
much, right now you pay $3,000 for the 100,000 approximately, you would pay $3,200 on that 100,000 value of your house.
And I'm sure we will have significant further conversations in greater detail on this topic. Other people who are present to speak?
I have a few items that I
Say your
would
name.
Name and address,
Robert
please.
Jelen, Jellen, 38 Lucerne Drive. I've had a lot of people approach me over the last approximately 2 years and ask me directly, why has the Board of Ed not taken some action on the original red cover, total number of options, I believe at that time was 6. I said, well, that is within the purview of the Board of Education. And I've tried to put them off. But then I started to get concerned as to why we have not, you have not, come to the point of bringing it to the public earlier than this evening. I was also rather upset that I'm on, as you know, I've been on 20 years on the Region 19 board, and I served on this board for 8 years prior to that. On both the K through 8 board and the Region 19 board that I'm on right now. It has always been a procedure that entire 28-year length of time, if we had special presentations such as these two nice people, the agenda was suspended at the very beginning, and my comrades, formerly and also on the Board of Education at E.O. Smith, know this is true. The superintendent would put that particular agenda item first and foremost. And in most cases, the public who was there, was ready to hear this particular issue, which is obviously the most important topic on your agenda this evening. My concern is, why was that not done? And it is from my experience that it is very effective, because people come, in this case, even a larger number of people, come to find out what the heck is going on. I wish that in the future you would do that. The other thing that concerns me a bit is the fact that I have always been a supporter of education. Every one of you on this board knows that. I have taught for 37 years, and I taught up at Sturbridge Village as well. I am on my agenda, the thing in my life that is first and foremost is education. I do not understand whatever the motive behind taking this long to get to this point was so imperative. I understand there are a lot of concerns in what these people have brought, what each and every one of you have brought. And not just you people sitting here right now, previous board members as well. We're looking at a situation in this town with the crumbling foundations and the price of real estate. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? We know what's happening in several other fronts as well. Why do we have to always lag behind other towns? That concerns me greatly. Is it, we're also looking at a situation too, where Region 19 right now, we are going to a referendum on December 10th. It's 3 towns, folks, including little old Willington, that are going to either vote for or vote against a complete roof replacement on E.O. Smith, including some solar as well. So we're having that on December 10th. If this were indeed referred from your Board of Education, excuse me, our Board of Education, to the Board of Selectmen, are those two referenda, because feasibly, they could come very close together. Is the town of Willington ready for that? Is the town of Willington going to support both of those things if indeed they do come to fruition at that time? This is a critical situation, folks. And those of you who didn't know about the E.O. Smith, Herb knows about E.O. Smith, Kiara knows about E.O. Smith. What I'm saying is, timing is everything. If this goes to the Board of Selectmen and it is approved, and then a date for a town meeting is called, and a date for a referendum is set. If there's too close to December 10th, and whatever date we go to referendum, and once again, I want to remind each and every one of you, if you have any doubts, I am a great supporter of education, have been all of my life. What I'm saying to each and every one of you, do it now, send it to them, and hope that it goes to referendum. And each and every one of you, when you're out with your friends, when you're out with your social groups, you talk up what you have just voted on. Thank you very much.
Others present to speak? Judy?
Judy Free, 19 Birchmore Lane. Thank you for letting me speak. I know that this has been a very long and arduous journey for all of you, starting many years ago. I commend you on your tenacity and the amount of work that was done that we don't see sitting here and that's done behind the scenes is I can only guesstimate to be phenomenal. So thank you very much for all your efforts, and I'm very grateful and grateful in advance for this next part of the journey.
Others, we're going to move to board comments? Okay, seeing none, moving on to board comments. Herb, would you like to start?
Well, I'd like to thank the retirees for their service. Make sure the superintendent conveys our hopeful with their successful retirement. Also, I want to thank Jill for the information on the budget, the school lunch program, keeping us up to date on that item. And thank you, people here this evening for coming out, especially Aaron and Kathy for the information that you provided us with. And I guess that's about it.
Guess we'll go clockwise, yeah?
I just can't wait till you guys who haven't seen Most Likely to Succeed see it, and I hope members of the public will get a chance to see it, because it kind of turns you on your head a little bit about education and about what's ahead because of what's happening now in terms of the way labor is changing in huge ways. Factory jobs and farm jobs in particular, and what that means for a future workforce and preparing our kids to be able-bodied participants in the future. And it's just inspiring too, but it's, so I can't wait to hear what you think and what you think about it, because it's really good.
Tracy?
I agree with what Herb said, to welcome the new employees, thank the GC is what I know her, and thank you to our presenters and those that came out to support our meetings tonight.
Thank you. Dan?
I'd like to congratulate Kate and Mike also on their new endeavors, the teachers that have left, and welcome all the people that have shifted around and been flexible enough to do that. And Aaron and Catherine, thank you so much for letting us know what our options were, and I'm very excited about the new school. I've been at this for about 6 years now, so it's very exciting to get to this point tonight where we're moving it on to the Board of Selectmen. So thank you all.
Yes, I also want to thank Phil for getting the information, Aaron and Catherine, we really appreciate your input. I also saw, would like to see, and I think it should be a requirement for the building committee to see. Definitely.
I'll bring the popcorn.
So, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. It's very important to any public body that deliberates in public to have the public's input. This is the culmination of a lot of community meetings we've been having over months, over years, and we appreciate your sitting through with us till 9:15 tonight. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 9:14 p.m.